For those new here who are unaccustomed to a woman preacher.
That's the name of the game, I guess. Find something that matters. Something that matters is something that's going to teach you something. Something that has a story worth telling. Something that has a story that will remind people of humanity. Something that will shape someone's life. I want to make my career count. I mean, make my choices count. Because as the older I get, the more sacrifices I have to make in order to go make my art with kids and responsibilities. And so I'm just looking for things that will make it count. This movie with Mona counted for more than I ever expected.
The gifts and calling of God given to souls in nature's darkness, not because they have repented, but they are intended to lead souls to repentance.
What is this repentance?
To leave off committing sin is the only repentance which God accepts, short of making an honest and faithful confession of all the sins ever committed in your whole life.
You know, I have to relate to characters that I play. I have to fall in love with them in some way. It wasn't as hard as I thought at first to relate to Anne Lee, because she existed in the 18th century, which is hundreds of years ago, and she had to fight for things and face things and witness things that I will never have to witness. But she was still searching for the same thing that I'm searching for. She still held dear the things that I hold dear. She still had enough compassion and a need to nurture to go around to feed 1 million people, and I feel like I can relate to that. So that was my through line, and I never lost that beam of light. Like it was impossible to forget anything when you were shooting this movie or even in production. It's like, this woman is such goodness and so little ego and just this thirst for connection and community that I think we all really have when we really listen to ourselves, really sit with ourselves. I think we all share that. Most of us share that. I think from the beginning of Anne Lee's life, I believe that what motivated her was her faith in God and her need to belong to something greater than herself, which she found in her faith, which a lot of people find in their faith, and it's beautiful. And she yearned for motherhood. She yearned to put her love in a very specific place. And then when she lost all 4 of her children in really just terrifying way in childbirth and in infancy, and it's just, one after the other. And I think when you feel the world telling you that you can't, you can either kind of die away or choose to find something greater still. And she really committed to her devotion to God and to her that instinct, that gut need as a human being to create and to have purpose.
I hunger and thirst, I hunger and thirst after true righteousness. I hunger and thirst, I hunger and thirst.
I had a lot of time. I had a year, 10 months to a year for certain things. But the first things I did was I started listening to Manchester accents online and realized very soon after that I'm going to need something more tailored to fit Anne Lee and the time period, which Tara Marshall, our accent coach, helped design, helped me feel somewhat comfortable. And then I also worked with Daniel right away, Daniel Plumberg, the composer, and started singing and recording certain simple gift hymns that were written by the Shakers. And we would just piecemeal these studio sessions together on Zoom or in Mona's house or wherever, in Brooklyn at our friend Jesse's studio. And then I also, early on, worked with Celia Rowson-Hall and the people that she collaborates with to learn this very, very, very specific hero prayer dance that we'd shot early, 8 months before we shot in Budapest. So I'm everything added up, and it was just a very long process, which it needed to be, because I think in playing somebody who's moving in worship and moving naturally, organically to this collective beat, you have to know it in your, you have to have this very concrete muscle memory. So I needed all the time I had. All of the research and the experience I had before we got to Budapest was done on my own time, and on Celia's own time, and on Daniel's own time, and Will Rexer's own time, the DP. We would just hang out at Mona's house sometimes and just go through the research. And that's when you know it's a good story, because you have all these artists kind of doing their own work. That's why I think it's so good. It's so cohesive, the finished project. The process was so collaborative and warm and beautiful and, ecstatic at times. But the finished product is also very cohesive because of the time that we did have. We didn't have time to shoot it, but we had time to prep. We set this precedent immediately, like, this is a warm place. This is a collaborative place. There aren't many rules. You can just, you're here for a reason. We're all here for a reason. We all got here. And we have this much time, which is not a lot, and we have barely any money. And so, like, we all get on the same page, and there's no hierarchies, and that is very important when creating a movie like this. And in the spirit of Ann Lee, rewarding. At 2 a.m. we were shooting. It was a split shoot. We were doing 2 units at a time at that point because we were running out of time, and we were tired, and we just were leaving it all in the field. And Mona, I have a beautiful video of Mona like humming to herself, taking out my braids and like brushing my hair while my makeup artist is taking off the latex prosthetics to make me the aging makeup. This was a process, and she stayed with me, and she just took out my braid, and we had a little bottle of wine there, and we did it together. And honestly, I needed to be held by the end, like physically held, spiritually, but physically, because it was so like spiritually draining. And like, you leave it all out in the field, like, it does cost. And I have a really good life. I built myself a really good private life, and it all kind of meshes together sometimes. And it's because of Mona that it didn't ruin my private life. It encroach on like the things I've built for myself as a human being. It just enhanced my art. And as I get older, I'm learning that it's so important for things to matter. And in order for them to matter, they also affect you deeply. There were very, very, very physically demanding days and sequences where I'm dancing and I'm singing and I'm out of breath, and I'm going through these different emotional places that Ann Lee went through in one day, just to show variation in like what ended up feeling like a music video for Beautiful Treasures, with the birthing sequence and intercut. And I just get the energy from everybody else. I think when you have a room of 150 people dancing in a very similar way, just like the Shakers, I think it moves you. I think it brings you to a kind of another level of energy. The shared energy is really, really, really impactful and really effective. And for some reason, every time you thought you were really tired and you couldn't catch your breath and you needed water, and everybody needed to take a water break, because at one point it was like 100 degrees for a bunch of days, and we were in these corsets, and the air conditioning was somewhat problematic. We still were able to like just carve out the energy from each other. It was like magic. And so the secret is just to, like, sometimes if you lose your energy, you just gotta look around. You can take it from somebody, not necessarily like steal it, but you can in some way like share it. And it was interesting. It was really interesting. Lots of parallels, lots of moments where I was like, is Ann Lee, she here? Like it felt like we did so much in the spirit of her and how she operated in her life from what we know. And I do feel like it felt like that when we were shooting, and I hope that even just a tiny bit of that energy can be felt when you're watching it.
country winds are calling.
I think the one of them that like really sticks out was one of the hardest, most like intimidating scenes for me, which is when I'm in the fainting couch and I'm like I have to be kind of positioned in a way that where I look a little gaunt without being gaunt. So like they put like shadowing on my collarbones and put glycerin to show sweat, and she painted my face in a way to look like I hadn't eaten, and it was very effective. Like the secret is you don't have to lose or gain weight for a role if you don't want to. I think most people know that, but I still feel like some people didn't get the memo because it just feels so fucking dangerous. To each their own. But it was amazing, like how just like a physicality and some makeup like can make me feel, and then the out of breath nature of it. Like it was just a juggle, like physically, emotionally, and mentally trying to. The accent was still kind of still too intimidating, and I had to monologue. And I felt like in that moment of all these faces looking at me, Stacey Martin, Scott Handy, Lewis Pullman, Thomas and Mackenzie Vila, Predajon, and Matthew Beer behind me, and like these are my followers, but these are also my friends and supporters, and all they want is for me to get through this monologue. And like that's all I felt at a point. I was like, they just really want me to succeed. And it's like this very good parallel to like her followers just wanting to believe and follow her and support everything she wants, you know, for the greater good. And it just felt like heartbreakingly pure and beautiful. Their presence in that scene, just Lewis saying, "You are my sister, but you're also my mother." It's just like, oh. It was hard for me not to laugh at like how perfect this moment was for me as an artist. It is hard to compare really any roles, unless I think about how empowered each of these people are and how inside of themselves and true to themselves they are. And so I can compare this role to The Dropout. I can compare this role to Sophia Mamma Mia. There's a real clarity of vision for these people and of purpose and truth. You know, there's a lot of truth in each of them. I think it's interesting when you really like put the microscope on each one, you do see the similarities. But with Ann Lee, I don't think I've ever played someone who never for a second after passing this threshold, ever questioned anything. And that is impossible for most people, not to have a doubt or two. And if she did doubt, I just don't believe Ann Lee doubted. Because I think any level of doubt would have threatened her trajectory, especially at that time. And so I think the uncompromising, the passionate nature of her goals, like just like Elizabeth Holmes, just like Sophie, just like, living this beautiful clarity. I do think that the Ann Lee had this extra bit of magic that really, really got her to succeed. The lack of ego sets her apart from everything. And I think that as intimidating as it is to play someone like that, there's also kind of a liberation in it because I didn't have to make any choices anymore. I got to just live in this blind faith, and it was very refreshing. It was very refreshing. And especially because there was a lot of physical stuff, and it was, even when she is being tortured, ripped apart, she forgives. It's incredible. When her brother is probably going to die, she's just singing him a lullaby. I really would. I hope I can take some of that as a mother myself. Like, I hope I can just see the good, choose to see the possibilities Right now, I want to just choose to see the possibility of something good, and it's really fucking hard. So, you have to make that choice as a human being to turn it off and look away and just go back to home and protect the kids and keep the home fires burning, or say something and actively, fight against the regime. And it's like, how do you do both? I don't know. I don't think I've ever played a character who can. So I guess that's what I'll be looking for next. It's so tiring, like talking about. I mean, I love talking about it, but it's tiring between, like, because sometimes it feels like the world's too big to hear this story, or the world's too big to open their ears or hearts for this story. And it's not my job to get every single person in the world to witness it, but it feels so important. And the more I talk about it, the more I remember, and also the more I discover about what it did for me, and what Ann Lee did for me, what Mona did for me, really. And sometimes it's hard to keep faith that it can keep, reverberating. But it's like my job now is to shut out the darkness a little bit and just remember, we do have something to say about humanity. This is why most of us tell stories. And even though, we have to be on stage clapping for each other, knowing the darkness, we have to just remember, okay, my job right now is to just keep these echoes alive. We did the hard work of telling the story, of getting the story even made, and now we just have to echo the work. We have to echo the ideals. We have to relate this to what it means to be human. I'll just keep having to raise her flag, and that's actually a fucking honor.